This is my favorite interview of all time. I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. You're going to get a level of honesty from Chris Larsen in this video. He's going to say things that Ripple would never say today. Shocking things, at least on the surface. But foundationally, the amount of knowledge you'll get from this is second to none. And the other thing is, you're going to see why Chris Larsen is so highly regarded as a visionary. He is peering into the future, man. Way back in the very early days, he's talking about things that just now today are hot button topics, areas that are just starting to catch fire. This guy can peek around the corner and see what the future holds. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, Jungle, you said Chris is no good. He should step away. To make it simple, I think the Chris Larsen you're hearing here ain't the same Chris Larsen that you get today. Now that XRP has made him an overnight billionaire, just my opinion. But this Chris Larsen you're hearing, I think gives you a good compass of where Ripple and XRP should be going and should have been going in 17, 18, 19, and 20. I think they got off track a little bit, and they're just starting to get back to this original vision. He's going to explain to you why you should not fear a stablecoin and other tokenized assets. And he's going to tell you, actually, and you'll never hear anyone at Ripple say this again, that the XRP token, XRP the currency, it's secondary in terms of importance. Can you imagine them saying that today? But he's going to explain when that is the case, and you are using the XRP ledger to its highest potential, that actually leads to the most value and utility for XRP. It's quite wild. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I do.
Chris.
Thanks for having us.
So Chris, tell us a little bit about Ripple. It's similar to Bitcoin in some ways. It improves on Bitcoin in other ways. Could you kind of just give us a basic overview?
Sure. So there's sort of two things here. There's the Ripple protocol, and then there's Ripple Labs. So the Ripple protocol, like Bitcoin, is an open source protocol that anybody can use. You don't have to pay Ripple Labs a fee or license anything. It really is like a public good. We don't own it, we built it, but it has now been released to the world. And
really quick, just so you understand, the Ripple protocol, that is the XRP Ledger. This was so early, they didn't have to make this fuss about, oh, it's totally separate, and we didn't build it, and it's one and the same. And even right there, he said, we built it, we don't own it. This stuff didn't even matter in court. They didn't argue this issue at all. And I think really early days, they made this shift of, oh, some other people made it and just gifted it to us because you didn't want a business attached to a crypto, because you had, Bitcoin and Litecoin and cryptocurrencies like that. And it seemed like a very uncrypto thing. But, in the modern era, most cryptocurrencies, they have a development arm, a business arm. Like, this has really become the future. So we don't have to play this little game any longer. But anyway, in this video, when he is talking about the Ripple protocol, he is talking about the XRP Ledger. They are one and the same thing.
the protocol is really three things. So some ways similar to the Bitcoin protocol, some ways very different. The way we view this is, first and foremost, this should be a distributed payments protocol. That sort of comes first before the map-based currency. We think that's really what the world needs, this idea of an internet for value, which we can talk about. Second, it is a math-based currency. Like Bitcoin, math-based currency simply means a currency without a counterparty, which is a really unique thing in the world. It plays a really, really unique and important role in building an internet for value.
And listen, I hate to interrupt so quickly, but I mean, think about today. If Brad Garlinghouse sat down and said, all right, look, when we look at the XRP Ledger, yeah, the XRP, it's pretty good. It's secondary. Like, they would never say that again. So if you're worried, oh my gosh, you know, they're going to come out with a stable coin and it's going to be used and it's going to replace XRP. Like, yeah, that was the plan all along. You should be using, more often than not, tokenized real world assets. That was what this thing was built for. But he's going to explain why that actually leads to a higher XRP value over the long term. Don't fear real world assets, stable coins of all sorts. We want that. That's the way this should have been being built out from 17, 18, and 19. It just becomes hard to say this when your XRP tokens go from 0.6 of a cent and only $400,000 a day in daily volume to now we're talking about billions of dollars in volume and, you know, a much higher price, and you're worth billions of dollars, you don't want to say that quiet part out loud because most people aren't going to really listen and understand what you're trying to say.
And then third, very different from Bitcoin, because Ripple is value agnostic. You can put anything in there. You can put Bitcoins themselves in there. You can put airline miles, dollar, euro, yuan, real, anything can be in Ripple. It ends up being, we think, the world's first distributed currency exchange. So that's kind of the Ripple protocol, those three things. And then there's Ripple Labs, which in some ways is kind of like a red hat to Linux. We are a for-profit startup, but again, we don't own the protocol. We built the protocol. We're still the main contributors to the protocol, but we think that will change over time. We view our job as just sort of, husband through the development of this new network. And there's about 40 of us now, and we plan to really expand that aggressively so we can really build a fantastic protocol.
So at this point, Bitcoin has somewhat massive adoption for a startup currency. It's somewhat unprecedented, and it's the first time we've seen a system like this where you don't have to rely on a third party. So what inspired you to start Ripple, and what does it really bring that Bitcoin doesn't?
Yeah. So obviously we love the idea of Bitcoin. We think Bitcoin has been successful, very successful in what it was designed to do. It was designed to be a global currency without the ability to be debased. So again, a currency without a counterparty. And that's great. So it's a great store of value. We think it's a great instrument that now does not rely on a central bank. So kind of mission accomplished. But there's a lot of also talk about kind of where this technology can go as far as being an internet for value, sort of a payments protocol. And what that really means is now for the first time, can you architect the exchange of value like we've been exchanging information? Kind of our view of the world is already connected through an information web. That's great. The last 20 years, that's what the world has figured out how to do. But when it comes to value exchange, that's really still pre-internet until now.
And so I think this is important. Chris is recognizing, Bitcoin fits its billing. It is a currency without a counterparty, a global currency, and that's great. They were really trying to do something very different with the XRP Ledger, which is what you want in a multi-chain world, right? You want to have, protocols that have strengths and weaknesses. Of course, Bitcoin is a great global currency, but it's not good for, this exchanging of different real world value and being this global exchange of various types of value. And then again, now we have, since this date, Ethereum, which now is programmability. So, you're kind of building this future out in parts and pieces, and eventually we'll link them all up and leverage them each for their strengths. And I think that is really what we see playing out.
Until this double spend problem that Bitcoin was the first to solve was, kind of figured out, you really could not have the exchange of value work like the exchange of information. And that's a huge cost to the world. So that if you can now have a value exchange, value web that works like our information web, layer that on top of the information web, you flatten finance, you tremendously save costs globally, but more importantly, you raise the amount of commerce that can happen. So many parts of the world, Africa and China and South America, that have access to the internet, the information web, but no ability to act on that information through a value web. And that's what we set out to do. So that's different than what Bitcoin set out to do. We set out explicitly to build an internet for value. So we think most people will use Ripple using dollars, euro, yen, the existing things of value that they're comfortable with. And
that's what a stable coin will do, right? You're going to transact in digital dollars, which you're used to, or digital euros, or gold, or silver, or any number of things. And so again, from day one, when they were trying to envision the future, which Chris is great at doing, they're like, this is what we're going to use this for. Not to take XRP and make it be used for every different purpose. That was not the design. We are supposed to be using stable coins. We are supposed to be using, tokenized gold and, tokenized real estate and, stocks in tokenized form. That is what this technology is supposed to be used for, not taking the XRP token and trying to make it the be-all, end-all of everything. That was not what this was built out to do. It kind of morphed that way, and it's, no surprise that that's not working so good. And it's so exciting to me that they're getting back to this vision, this idea that, you know what, this is how we build the future.
Ripple, our currency, really plays more of a supporting role. So you can completely ignore it, or you can use it directly. The important thing is the value web plays the starring role, the math-based currency plays the supporting role. We think that's kind of the opposite of Bitcoin.
For sure. So you mentioned China and Africa. So in
can you
places
imagine
like this,
saying you can ignore XRP now? They would never say that.
Over older technology, cell phones, SMS, and things like that. So will it be possible to do that with Ripple as well?
Yes, so Ripple is really a foundational protocol, not really even the platform or a network. Those are kind of second level implementations. Others can build those platforms, those networks on top of the Ripple protocol, just like you can with the Bitcoin protocol. So these are what we think what's cool here is they're really foundational. They really are HTTP for money or SMTP for money. We like that idea. So what these technologies do really well is they actually start federating all of these other dispersed pre-internet systems all around the world. So that like M-Pesa in Kenya, which runs on feature phones, now can get integrated to the ACH system in the US and to the SEPA system in Europe. And you can now integrate these things instantly. So what this brings to the table is instant settlement at virtually no cost, and it's accessible to anybody that has internet access. And really bringing all these various systems together, just like the internet brought together pre-internet communication systems. It used to be so expensive to make a phone call internationally. You have to line up in front of some office somewhere and pay a fortune. And now we take it for granted that information just travels freely everywhere. That's where value exchange is going over the next.
I want to make this point too. The vision of the XRP Ledger used to settle transactions fast and cheap. Nowadays, we have a lot of really advanced blockchains. We've moved far beyond just Bitcoin and Litecoin and, some of these early cryptocurrencies. You have chains like Solana with really high TPS and Avalanche with near instant settlement. But when you look at the XRP Ledger, it's still world-class for settlement when you kind of add it all together. The speed of it, also the finality of the payment, the reliability of the network. When you actually take a look at the whole package, this is still a leader for this purpose because it's finely tuned to do exactly this.
Decade because of these breakout technologies like Bitcoin and like Ripple.
And I would assume that Ripple would allow you to have more liquidity in these currencies. So by using XRP, the currency behind Ripple, you could trade my airline miles, which aren't extremely liquid, for dollars in Kenya.
So the thing about what XRP, the role that it plays, this supporting role, Ripple doesn't require you to ever use XRP, even in a trade. I mean, the cool thing here is that anybody in the world now using Ripple can put a bid ask on anything of value from any issuer. So for example, somebody could decide, I'm going to make a market between United Airline miles, if once United Airline miles are on Ripple, I hope they will be someday, to Brazilian real. You could go directly. You don't actually have to go through XRP. But what we believe will happen is that most market makers in filling out the world of exchanging value from anything of value, again, currencies, merchant reward points, airline miles, gold, silver, anything that you define as value, most people will actually, most market makers will use XRP because as a currency without a counterparty, it is a completely unique thing in the protocol, just like Bitcoin is completely unique. So again, our view of why math-based currencies are so valuable isn't necessarily that they replace existing currencies, it's just that they have a very unique feature in that they have no counterparty. So the whole world, the world only has to think about one thing when it comes to Bitcoin or Ripple, is the price in any microsecond in time. You never have to think about the counterparty risks. It turns out that is a completely unique thing that's never existed before. So why is that important? Let's say we use the example of a farmer in Nepal wanting to buy farming equipment from a supplier in Kenya.
And this is what's so important with what he's telling us here. You're not forced to use XRP to send a payment. So give people stable coins. Great. You can use a stable coin. You can use gold, airline miles, whatever. But what you will find is because of the specific attributes of XRP, market makers will gravitate towards using XRP as a trading pair. And so it's not about forcing people to use XRP. They will use it because it's the best way to flip between different types of value, to settle out transactions, So you should not fear, stablecoins coming onto the ledger, because no matter what you do, the very best way to settle out your value will still at the end of the day be to leverage XRP for its very specific and novel capabilities.
Yeah, let's say. If you didn't have the math-based currency, even in an internet for value, you'd probably have to go Nepalese rupee to Indian rupee to British pounds to Kenyan shilling. That's a lot of hops.
Right, and you're going to lose a good amount of money on each hop.
You lose value on every hop, right? Because you're involving currencies with counterparties, things of value with counterparty. It'd be much better to go Nepalese rupee to XRP through a market maker, and then there's some other market maker that has made a market between Kenyan shilling and XRP. Now, Nepal and Kenya are one hop away. You're actually one hop away from airline miles, and everything is one hop away. That's why a math-based currency, we think, is really unique and really has value.
So when we're talking about the very famous phrase, all of the money, it doesn't mean literally we're going to bring all of the money onto the XRP ledger. Stephen Thomas has talked about why we actually don't want that, why we do not want all of the money flowing onto the XRP ledger. But what it means is everything that we can load onto the ledger, it is all most efficient when it's running through XRP, because it doesn't matter, if you're trading dollars for gold, if you're trading euros for yuan, the easiest path is always going to be to hop to XRP and then over to whatever your destination is. That's the fastest, easiest, cheapest way to go. And that's how money's always going to flow. No one's going to say, hey, I like US stablecoins, so I'm going to spend more money to make this trade. Like, no one wants to do that. And they're really not even going to get that option, because the system is going to take the best path through its path finding algorithms, and it's always going to route value through XRP, because you are one hop away from all of the money, all of the value. And so this is really XRP's great attribute here, and why people will use it even though they are not required. Even if there are competing currencies or competing assets, XRP is the native currency, will always have that advantage, and ultimately will always win out.
So what are your greatest issues and concerns with growing Ripple and adoption?
There's a lot of things to think about in building these things. Obviously there's the technology piece, the trust in the code, the trust in the stability, always being up and always being in a distributed peer-to-peer system. So getting all those things right is really hard. Second is sort of the utility. Where can you use it? How do I bring dollars or real or Chinese yuan onto these platforms so you can buy whatever? That involves all kinds of regulatory issues, as we all know about. And then third is sort of the liquidity. Do you have enough market makers? Which again, the cool thing about these protocols is it can be anybody in the world. It could be somebody who's a student in the middle of inland China. Or it can be the largest, high-frequency trading company, on Wall Street. That's a cool thing, but we have to make sure that you get enough market makers in all these key currency pairs. So those are the kind of things we think about all the time. Trust you.
I'll tell you this, a couple things to unpack that he just said. Number one, mission accomplished. No one, not even the worst detractor, is worried that an XRP payment is going to go through or that the network is going to fail. We've been over a decade, no issues. You'll never hear anyone say that. They may say, well, the price is going to be low because Ripple's selling or whatever. But they've shown that this network is robust and it's reliable and it is here for the long term. So that is a major one. But the second thing that drives me nuts is when people are like, they want the regular folk out and they only want institutions. Like, as Chris just told us, Joe Schmo, their liquidity spends just as good as Bank of America or, some big investment bank or some hedge fund. Like, this should be the transactions of the world. Regular people, big institutions, everyone should be able to leverage this technology. And again, you will build off of each other's liquidity. So there's no reason why XRP should not have, retail use cases. The only reason you haven't seen that built out to date is just because they've been concerned about the regulatory blowback. As soon as you see clear regulations in the United States, you're going to see a bunch of retail use cases, some funded by Ripple, some funded by others, come ripping and roaring onto this blockchain. It's just a matter of time. There is no reason why you would possibly want to exclude regular people, retail users, from using the XRP Ledger. That's a fantasy. That's something people make up to try to excuse the fact we are short on retail use cases and applications and things like that. And you're going to see that's going to change in a big way. And I think it's just the type of people that are building on this network. They don't want to take the extra risk. They understand it's out there, as they found out. And so they just have went the safe way. But as soon as you get regulations, they don't got to be safe no more. They can go after each and every market that this technology is really good for. And a lot of that is going to be for regular retail users.
And liquidity. And then, of course, the other big thing going on here is reputational risk. I think that's where the industry is right now. You're seeing all these incumbents. Everybody's thinking about Bitcoin, math-based currencies, Ripple. They're all super intrigued. We meet with people like every day at the highest level. Where you are now is this fear of reputational risk of getting involved with these protocols. If a big bank gets involved, will they get this firestorm from their regulators? So that's what's holding everybody back. So that's really what we all have to work on collectively. How do you get law enforcement comfortable, and therefore then the banks are comfortable, and then that reputational risk is taken off the table. They see the value, and that's when you really start getting these things exploding.
And we're just seeing that now. BlackRock, Fidelity, Congress talking about, rules for this space. Everything he's talking about is just starting to fall into place. Where he said we need to figure out how to, effectively bring asset values onto the ledger. Things like stablecoins. They're just kind of figuring all this out, and what licensures you need, and what reporting you have to follow. Like everything he's talking about in this interview, you see taking place in 2024. We're getting close. We are getting there. And it's really amazing that, way back in the day, he was able to see all these paths to success, and they're just like checking off a box, one after the next after the next.
What does 2014 look like? And how do you see all the other altcoins and the competition between Bitcoin and Ripple and everything panning out?
So what we really want to focus on now is building an amazing team. So we're up to about 40 now, and we're aggressively recruiting for cryptographers and developers. We think this is all really about getting incredibly talented technology folks, business development folks, product folks, building stuff that's super valuable. So that's job number one, and that's what we funnel all of the, we've created a lot of value in XRP, which we're able to monetize. The one thing that's really unique here about these Ripple, Bitcoin is these are really the first protocols that actually have monetization built right in. It's kind of never been anything like that. If you look at Twitter, Twitter has had to be a platform because it was the only way you can monetize it. The really cool thing is you have a built-in mechanism. And what we're trying to do is use the value that we're being able to monetize already to pump that right back into the protocol. So that's kind of job number one. Then again, it's also working on the reputational risk in 2014. As far as the other altcoins, it's great. What is going on here, I think, is an explosion of things of value. Because if we can really have an internet for value, like Ripple, and that's what we're aiming to do, it's currency agnostic, value agnostic, that actually makes it easier for all these new things of value to flow freely. So that you could take a new altcoin and send it to a merchant in Japan. It shows up as yen, almost magically, because there's some market maker who's interested in making a market. So whatever the world is willing to value as a new thing of value because it has this feature or that feature, that's great. And I think Ripple really helps grease the wheels for that.
I'm going to end it here, but I'll tell you this. One thing that I think is going to help adoption too, at this time, Chris is thinking about, we're going to have these market makers that are just going to pop up all over the place and be setting these markets for all these different currencies. And now what do we have? We have AMMs, automated market makers, where regular people, institutions, whoever, they can be these market makers, and they can easily contribute value and earn a yield off of it. And so I think that's going to really help build these markets up quicker, more efficiently. And so that's probably something that even Chris couldn't envision. But anyway, there's another 10 minutes left of this interview. Head over to Bank XRP's channel. He has the full interview there. Give it a watch. Tell me what you think about it. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And again, I think a lot of the things we see happening now, people think, oh, Ripple's given up on XRP, or maybe XRP doesn't have the value that we originally thought it did. And I think that couldn't be farther from the truth. We are actually seeing this system be built out in the way it was originally intended to do so. And regulatory clarity helps. You've seen other people kind of jump in here and start building some of these systems out competition, and so it pushes Ripple in this direction. And I just think that Ripple and the broader XRP developers are doing a great job bringing these very needed features, things like AMMs, bridging technologies, Oracle services. Like, they're taking this stuff to the next level. And I think we're going to realize the vision that really Chris was talking about so many years ago here in 2014 or whatever year this was. Let me know what you think down below. As always, please like, please subscribe. The revolution will be televised right here on Jungle Link.